I love my work. I love all aspects of it, the troubleshooting, the puzzle solving, the challenges, the pride in doing something right. But the flip side of that is a lot of the things that you see on the channel, the big extensive restorations, are kind of expensive and out of the reach of a lot of players. You know, it's kind of rarefied air to some degree. But occasionally, and I can't do this all the time for everyone, but occasionally I'll do one just because. My buddy Logan Hanna here, who's been a great friend and a great friend of the channel, doing playing videos for us, has been gigging with this 69 Deluxe Reverb for at least the last decade. And the guy in town who did a lot of the work before me has been in here, and I've done little patch-up jobs on it over the years. I had to change out the filter caps in 2015. They're still going strong. We had to replace the baffle because the old baffle was falling apart. So it's got a Mojo Tone baffle. You saw that on the channel before, etc., etc. Anyway, this amp has just been fixed. It's had a series of fixes over the years, and it's just a real Heinz 57. And it's not sounding its best. It's sounding okay, but not its best. So I decided, what the hell? I've got all these parts here. Let's put it to where it ought to be. So as you can see, that involves removing a lot of old stuff. And in the process, I'm going to clean up all this 1969 spaghetti. 69 amps are kind of unique among Fenders in that they apparently got a lot of bulk wire from a telephone company. The wire in 69, as you can see, is very different from the later fat white spaghetti plastic stuff and the earlier cloth-covered stuff. It's fine, but you know, it is very much of 1969. As I was going through and disconnecting things and taking a closer look at things, I noticed how much filth and yuck was built up on the brass control strip in this amp. I mean, just an oily film on everything, and it's on the input jacks as well. That's just a small sampling of the yuck that awaits. Here's another view of all the yuck in there. And that yuck, I know from experience, will also be beneath this brass control panel, which will affect grounds. So here I'm pulling the whole thing out, gonna clean it off, and then clean it up with some Brasso. Here's the result, nice and clean. Next, I'll remove that old solder and give us a fresh start. But I knew that beneath that old solder, the brass was still fine. I didn't need to Brasso everything. Speaking of grounds, this amp has the transformer-mounted grounding hardware, and it's all yucky, and all the nuts holding the transformer were semi-loose, and over time those solder joints give way, so that's all gonna go away. Here you can see all the solders out, and I put back the original standard hex nut, but later it'll get a Keps nut. And with almost everything off the board, they ended up getting changed out. A few other things were changed out in the process. You'll see that later. But at this point, I could see how much residue of flux and just various deposits of yuck were on the fiberboard from all the years of partial work and rework, etc., etc. So time to get in there and start cleaning it all up. Much, much better. Now to rebuild. Another look at how it was when it came in, and how it is now. All the capacitors match, all the resistors match. Crucially, it has ceramic disc caps back where the old pre-66 ones did. So now this amp is going to be true to the 64-65 version of the circuit, which is a nice place to be. Here you can see the new chassis ground connections soldered directly to the chassis, and you can see the Keps nuts. You get a little sneak peek at the bias stuff. Here are the filter caps I did back in 2015. All that's still good. I didn't need to redo that. It's not as pretty as my current work, but it holds up just fine. Thank you very much. The input jacks were all discolored and filthy, and that yuck had just soaked into the phenolic. And the metal was looking a little weak, so it's time to replace them with some shiny new Switchcraft 12As. There you can see them in place, and some nice shielded cable going various places. Now the bias is interesting in these amps. Fender originally used a 25 microfarad 50 volt cap, which is not a lot of filtering at all. I've gone to using a 47 or 50 microfarad cap there because it charges faster. But, and this is not because of a limitation of 50 or 47, even in amps which have 100 microfarad caps there, occasionally there'll still be a little bit of hum in the output. And I know that people chase their tails trying to get rid of that last bit of hum. They think, okay, something's wrong with the filtering, something's wrong with the grounding, I got bad tubes, what is causing this? That hum is actually riding the bias voltage. And the fix for that is just to add one more small filter cap stage to the bias. So here you can see one, and it's added to the wiper of this pot. Just a little 22 microfarad. Adding a 22 in this case, or it could have been a 10, to a second stage with a resistance between them is more effective than having just one large capacitor up front. So this is a very inexpensive way to get the last of the hum out of certain Fenders. And here's just a nice look at everything I did. I couldn't vary the focus while moving the camera around. Sorry, I'm not that good a cameraman yet, but everything is really pretty in there. Vichy everywhere you look, except for the old carbon comps. The ceramic sockets can stay, though they're not my preference. And that pot you see there on the rear, that's an added mids pot. Really makes the amp more versatile. We're going to leave that in place. Now at this point, the amp was beautiful and it was sounding overall great, but it had a little bit more hiss than I'd like, and I was able to trace that down to some old tongue saw preamp tubes. So some new TAD red bass 7025 premium selected blah blah blahs are on order, and when it arrives, I'll put them in the amp and then we'll put it all together and you'll get to hear Logan taking his new old amp for a spin. So that'll be next time.